Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 2 of Scouting Session. I'm Jérôme Bérubé, and I'm joined, as always, by Brad Allen. Hey, Brad, how's it going?
It's going poorly, Jérôme. My fantasy pool has ended in 5 days. I'm supposed to know prospects and know what I'm doing, and my pool ended. It's already over. It's injuries, though. In my defense, it's all injuries. But yeah, I've got 5 injuries, and I got a doubleheader this week, and I'm crippled. So I'm already out of the playoff race, and I'm going to have to sell way before the deadline. So that's my immediate update.
Well, I'm sure you're going to keep our listener very updated about your hockey pool, like you update me every week about it. So,
of course.
All right. So today's episode, we're going to talk about. We're going to review the 2025 draft. Last week we did the Pacific Division, and today we're going to do the West Division. So if you have not watched, you can go back on our YouTube channel, watch the first episode where we took a look at what the teams in the Pacific Division did in last year's draft. So let's start with our first team, Brad, the Chicago Blackhawks. So I'll just share the screen here, but here's what the Chicago Blackhawks did last June. So we have a future video coming up reviewing the Chicago Blackhawks prospect pool. So a few of those guys that we did talk about them. So we're gonna maybe talk about them again here. But if you want to have more information, check our YouTube channel. That video will be released this upcoming Thursday. So Chicago, a lot of picks, Brad. Obviously, Frondell at number 3 was pretty much a lock. I think after seeing Schaefer and Misa going 1-2 for them, the big question I think with Frondell is he going to be a center or is he going to be a winger? I think that's still the big question with him. Nestrasil at 20 with the 25th overall pick is looking good in college already. We didn't mention in that video how Chicago loves to draft like those unicorn, talent like Nestrasil, Mason West fits in that category. So maybe just let's focus on the 3 first-round pick for now. Brad, maybe let's start with Frondell for you. Maybe your quick take on the Frondell pick by Chicago and how he fits with the Bedard, with the Nazar, and Rinzel. I think Frondell could be a really big power play, asset for the Hawks maybe as soon as next year.
Yeah, absolutely. So he makes their power play terrifying, and gives them like Bedard and him on either flank. It's like ridiculous what they're going to be capable of doing. Lateral setups are going in the back of the net, and Chicago's power play is going to be absolutely lethal sooner rather than later. The huge thing with Frondell was like they needed a power forward. They needed a kid who is physically way ahead of the curve. Because their team is a bit small up front, and they knew that. And based off the entire draft that you're seeing in front of you, they immediately responded to that and knew it themselves. So they got way bigger this draft. Like if there was ever an overarching theme of this class in general, it's they got way bigger, way stronger. And as you mentioned, that fits with their theme. They love athletic freaks of nature. They love that player type. They want toolsy players, and that's exactly what they got here. So with Frondell, phenomenal start to the SHL. He's doing things that Jérôme, we were huge fans of this kid. We really believed in him. And he, I think, has surprised us even a bit with some of the creativity, I would say, down low. It reminds me, honestly, of what he was like more in J20 before he got to the Allsvenskan, where we did see more of that net front and down low creativity. That kind of reminds us of Joras Slafkovsky, where you're looking at like advanced feints and bank passes off the back of the net, and using his handling to really like trick opposing defenses net front there. So very impressive. He is going to be a monster for them very shortly. One factor with him when it came to picking him at 3 is like he is the most physically developed player in that class. And so that means he's much closer to the show than most of these other kids. And obviously, Chicago is now in that transition state where they're trying to become more competitive. And so I think he fits perfectly with that window. Vaclav Nastrosol, as you mentioned, like one of your favorite players in last year's Jérôme, last year's draft, Jérôme. So tons of potential and primary playmaking force, which is a perfect complement to somebody like Frondel, for instance, because as we know, Frondel is more of a primary shooter, even though he can pass a puck as well. And then the ultimate wild card. What happens when you get unlimited picks, Jérôme? You get to go a bit crazy and have some fun, and that's Mason West. Mason West has a ton of potential. It's going to be completely based off his shot development. So like again, we mentioned this I think in the segment we do, Jérôme, but I'll mention it here briefly, which is that I think Mason West has some inconsistencies with the shooting mechanics. I know he would disagree with me on that since he thinks his strongest aspect is his shot. I really think it will be his rangy playmaking and speed in transition that really separates him as a prospect. But there's a ton of potential here. And it's all about that untapped development. And he needs a ton of time, and their prospect pool is so deep, so he gets it. So that would be, I'd say, the big thing about the three is like also just from like a generalized draft philosophy point of view, you get Frondel, his floor is diamond etched. Nestrosol's floor is pretty darn high as well with the way he competes, the way he can win board battles, the physicality of him. So they got just diamond after diamond floors. So what can you do? You take the massive swing, and that's what they did with Mason West there. What do you think about the mid rounds there, Jérôme?
Well, we can start with Nathan Beam in the third round, and he's actually a guy we did talk quite a lot last season amongst our staff because there was some good debate. I was one who I just didn't have much time for him, to be honest. It's not that he's not talented. It's just I just have a hard time getting on board with players I find too passive, and that was a bit my issue with Beam last year with Kamloops. It was a bit too passive for me. He had some really great game last year. I think he had like a one game where he had 7 points. But I just never felt. I never really got on board with him, and he went in the third round, which is not a bad spot for him. Maybe he can play with more pace, this year or in the upcoming season a bit, and with a bit more compete. That would help. That would really help. Help him reach the NHL one day. But there's a lot of work here that needs to be done. But he does have the talent to play one day in the NHL. It's just does he really want it? That's what I'm unsure about. Does he know how to get there? And not. It's one thing to tell a player like you need to play harder, you need to compete harder, and they will listen, but that doesn't mean they will apply it. It's just every player that had a low compete, they had coaches telling them you need to compete harder, but they don't all do it, right? So that's a bit of an issue with Beam. Julius Soon from Moncton, German prospect, who I think he has like a Canadian citizenship also, so he didn't count as an import last year with Moncton. Really a guy who really made some good stride in the queue the past few years. He was good at the U20 for Team Germany. So he's actually an older prospect, so he's 20 right now. So interesting pick. Sometime undrafted Euros in the queue, they tend to fly under the radar at some point. I remember Andre Palat didn't get drafted his first year draft eligibility. Gets drafted in the second time around, but only in the seventh round. So sometimes like those Euros, maybe they take a bit more time to to figure out their games. Maybe it's the case with Sumph. I don't know if there's enough. Me personally, watching him last year, like I like the player, but I don't know if there's enough here for the NHL. maybe maybe he's more of a really good AHL player slash Euro, in Germany or Switzerland, whatever league you want to put him. So unsure about Zoom, but in the fourth round with the depth of last year's draft, by that I mean the non-depth of the draft, it's not a bad pick. It's there's a chance here maybe he's a player down the road, but it's going to take some time for him. Maybe obviously we're not going to talk about every player of every team that has been selected. So maybe one last player, Brad, the goalie in the seventh round, Ilya Karnarski. We did mention him a bit in the Chicago prospect pool video, but maybe for those who have, well, the video is not out, so nobody has seen the video, but just maybe a few words on Konarski, and then we'll move on to the next team after.
Sure, yeah. I'll just mention briefly with Nathan Beam is like he is like the dark horse, I'd say, of this class, Jerome, where if he hits, it gives them real depth value. Reminds me a ton of Warren Fogle. Really strange player. His development is basically everything to him, meaning like his base instinct is to drive possession, but his toolkit doesn't allow him to do that at the rates that you would project for the NHL at this time. So the skating base has to come miles, specifically with his linear crossover mechanics and acceleration out of the gate. It's lacking a lot. The other factor that's very interesting about Nathan Beam that I've never really seen mentioned publicly. I did a massive breakdown of this kid in his draft year because of how weird he was. He was like a conundrum to me. And his passing rates 60 were so low for his ice time. It was unbelievable how few pass attempts he would make per game on average. And that speaks to the instinct of the possession driving. So he needs to do a better job of understanding how to incorporate his teammates so that he can get himself in the right position. Because a smart player, when he's off the puck in the offensive zone and he knows how to pick his spots, he just doesn't do it at the rate he should do it. So it's about understanding to draw back the driving instinct, increase the playmaking capacity, and then you might get a very interesting middle six scoring threat or top nine scoring threat. So I just want to mention about the dark horse factor with Beam. And to your point, Julius, so very briefly, I thought there was games where he just straight up took over in the queue. Like he was really dominant some games for me. And I think that was one of the main reasons that he didn't get overlooked on this draft relative to the others. I will mention also very briefly, Ashton Cumbie is a fortress of a kid, like Andrew Jacked, special. For who don't know, that's he just got third at the Olympia there. This is my current favorite bodybuilder. He looks like he was carved in stone. The dude's a monster. Ashton Cumbie is that as well. Ashton Cumbie is a physically dominant player who will drop the gloves instantly. And then he's a throwback 80s style shutdown, old school defenseman. And I just want to mention him because this player type is sneaky sometimes. Every team needs one of these types of players. And he fits that role where can he be a third pairing insulator that does the dirty work when needed for a team. Like he will not allow Chicago to get overrun. And again, Chicago up to this draft was too small. So again, he fits that theme. And to Ilya Konarski. So yeah, I broke him down a lot for the actual prospect video. So I'll keep this one short, which is that I think this is the best back half, like 6th, 7th goalie pick in the draft. I missed on him. And I break down why in our other video there. But this goalie, he's putting up like Shesterkin type of numbers in the VHL, though I think Shesterkin, again, did it a year younger, which really matters. But this player is very similar to how Jesper Wallstedt operates. I'm not saying he's as talented as Wallstedt or as advanced, but the way they operate is very, very similar. If he can increase his weight transfers out of nowhere, people might find out in the future what this kid's all about. He's off to an exceptional start in the VHL on a very mediocre team.
Yeah, very interesting pick by Chicago. And, does it say always pick a Russian goalie somewhere in the draft? They do some really great stuff with goalies over there, and you never know. Like you might, find a really interesting goalie in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, and maybe for the Blackhawks. I mean, it's looking pretty good right now for a 7th round pick. So interesting pick by the Blackhawks. All right, let's move on to the next team, Brad, and we'll go with the Colorado Avalanche, who did not have many picks in the draft. So let's take a look here at what they did. So Colorado, three picks. So Brad, we did mention a bit about Linus Funk in a recent video that is not out yet. We have a lot of content, guys, so bear with us here. But we mentioned Linus Funk, who's now with the London Knights, and also so that's actually a guy we kind of miss in our book last year. He is he's a right D. Maybe I think Brad, you think more of a stay-at-home guy, more than a two-way guy, but he's in a good program with the London Knights, so he should get better. That's usually what happens when you play for the London Knights. But maybe maybe you have any take on him, maybe in your other selection by the Avalanche. Only three picks. That's a bit hard on the scouting staff here. But maybe Brad, you have a few things to say about some of those picks here.
Yeah, you know what? It's in hindsight now. So Linus Funk is very interesting to me because if I compared him to Dominic Badinka at the same age, I would say they're pretty comparable. So that indicates to me that it's a heck of a pick. Like getting him in the fourth is really good work by Colorado. Hidden value, we break it down further, but I knew this kid in November. There are so many players in the draft. I did not sweep and go back, and I forgot to do it, and that's on me. So it's phenomenal value pick. Let's put it that way. I really think there's a chance he plays based off what I've seen so far. But again, as to your point, developmentally, it's all about the secondary offense because there is a lot of modern day aspects to him that work. It's just from an offensive perspective, I think he rushes things. I don't think he knows how to really fit into an offensive structure when it comes to a power play properly yet. But we'll see. We'll see if there's enough. If he does develop offense, like holy heck, that's going to be an unbelievable pick in the future if he can hold. Francesco Delce. So. This is an interesting pick because we talk about in our other breakdown of the Jérôme that we did in systems breakdown about how they're kind of in the minority right now because Sean Barons is small, not the most toolsy player, and then Gulyev is not the most sophisticated player offensively. He's not what people think. Like when you see a shorter player who's accelerating in the KHL, you think offense, right? You're thinking about a player who's an offensive defenseman, maybe like a Devin Taves situation that they have their car. He does not play anything like that. He is actually much more of a secondary offensive type of player. He is not a dynamic four-way mobile player in terms of like operating through his skating to break down the first layer from the line. So you get to Francesco Delce, and he also doesn't fit what the NHL is doing right now in a lot of ways, which is one of the reasons they got him in the third, which is the NHL wants big toolsy specialization or utterly elite hyper offensive defensemen like the Lane Hudsons of the world and the Kel McCarrs, Quinn Hughes. Francesco Delce is one of those more quote unquote older school mid 2000s types of puck moving defensemen that's well rounded but a master of nothing. So the whole system, it's very interesting from a development perspective. What can they make Francesco Delce more specialized in the future? Can they get Linus Funk to a point where his secondary offense takes off? And can Gulyev and Barons hold defensively when you see these offensive-oriented, playoff-heavy set teams that do chip and place, dump and chase sequences that overwhelm, they load them up and overwhelm smaller defensemen. Can they hold and develop through that? So like that's the whole base of what Colorado has to do. Their picks are very interesting, and in some ways, like I think Funk is an excellent selection in the fourth, but it's so much of their picks are going to come down to defensive development and what they can get out of them and extract.
Yeah, and their first pick in the draft, like he's another guy that was passed over in I think one or two draft. So he's an older guy already playing college hockey. So it's gonna remains to be seen if that there will be enough here for reach the NHL. But I mean, you're asking a lot of miracles out of your scout. When you have 3 picks and you know and you don't have a pick before pick 77. That's really hard on the scouting staff, and you need a bit of luck and lots of work in your development staff to you know get one of those guys in the NHL. So anyway, that will be it for Colorado. Not many picks, so a bit of an easy a quick and out conversation about them. Obviously, drafting, as I mentioned in their video, drafting um, the actual draft is not really really high on their priority list. It's more like they're really trying to win the Stanley Cup. They have like obviously the McKinnon in the car. Landeskog is back. They have a lot of guys, and that's where they're at. So they're trading a lot of picks also. So as you see, not many draft picks. So the next team will be the Dallas Star. So let's take a look at what the Dallas Star did in June. Not no high pick for them. As I'm sharing the screen here. No pick before the third round. They took Cameron Schmidt, who a guy we actually had, pretty high in our top. I want to say top 35. I think he was just outside of our top 32. A lot of discussion about him in our staff meeting. So interesting pick by them with Cameron Schmidt. They do. It's kind of like the year before they took Emil Hemming, who was a big time shooter, but just not someone who brought much more else to the table. Now, Cameron Schmidt is, I don't want to say he's similar because he's obviously doesn't have Hemming's size, but he does have the really high end shooting ability. Now the key for Schmidt will be to bring other things to the table. The playmaking, a bit more consistent with his playmaking, and obviously his play away from the puck. I mean, the best example for him is just to look at how Cole Caulfield has evolved in Montreal. Came in as a goal scoring, shooting forward, and now he's becoming a much better two-way forward. So I think if you look at how you want to see Schmidt develop in the next few years, this is what you want to see. A bit more play, a more mature game out of him. That would be really helpful getting him to the NHL. But guys with his size, there's not many of them at the NHL level. So it's going to be interesting to see how he performed last time. Although last time Dallas picked a 5'8" forward out of the WHL. Yeah, it worked out with Logan Stankoven. And it did not work out for us. All right, maybe Brad, you want to chime in on Schmidt and maybe a few other guys here on the list here. Again, we're not going to touch on every players, but the guys that we knew and we actually ranked, we're gonna talk a bit about them.
Yeah, sure. So what's fascinating about Cameron Schmidt, there's two things. One is he's by far the most talented player that was available at the spot they took him. That speaks to a deeper philosophy of what Dallas does. They do that all the time. Like if there is a player that either has off-ice concerns or they're very short or they don't mind or they're just the way they play is different, they don't mind taking a gamble as long as the talent is for sure the best talent still available. This is a thing they do, and it makes a ton of sense because, like Colorado, we just talked about, this is one of the top franchises. They don't have a lot of top-end picks, so they're swinging. They're swinging to try to get that top-end value back in place to replace it over the years. So with Cameron Schmidt, it's all about shot selection, how he operates, just cleaning up his shot selection. The big thing with this, though, is with Cam Schmidt is he's on a team where he has to, quote-unquote, be the best player for his team. He doesn't have a running mate. I think that is really the big argument about how you view and evaluate this player long term. Because yes, at times is he too selfish? For sure. Is there times where his play selection is poor? Absolutely. Does he overshoot a puck? Does he force plays? Does he do those things? Absolutely. But he also does not have a true center. So it's one of those situations. A true center, he doesn't have a Jake O'Brien, right? So it's one of those situations where I don't think we ultimately know what Cameron Schmidt actually is until he's out of the WHL. We're going to have to wait a bit on him. But makes a lot of sense for where they got him. Brandon Gorzinski is the wild card dark horse of this class. Gorzinski grew on me as the year continued. I really thought that he played he wasn't on the same line as Kindell. He wasn't getting one of those situations where he's getting padded stats because he was with Kindell. So big kid, physical. And I felt like he's one of those players when you watch him, you're like, oh, this kid's untapped. There's a lot of potential here. His shot, so he loves to use a snapshot, and like snapshots from mid-range, they translate in the NHL to a degree. The problem is that his snapshot tendencies and how he operates within his wrist shot mechanics need to be overhauled. Like his window of operation when it comes to his shooting mechanics, they need to be augmented or he's not going to play long term. But his playmaking's there, the handling's impressive, the skating's there, and he's well rounded. There's a Swiss Army knife 6'3" player here with a very interesting skill set long term. I loved this pick. I thought it was one of the better picks in the draft, and that's what Dallas has to do. They have to find that diamond in the rough in the back half here. Last player I'll mention, Jérôme, before giving to Adeoki, shutdown specialist. So we're going into a specialization here, not a ton of offense, but he is a 6'1" center who's mature, is donned an international sweater for Finland for a while, and can he be a fourth line shutdown specialist that you put on a penalty kill, takes key draws, and can stay above replacement level? Can he fill kind of what Radek Faksa is now long term? I think that's the thought process behind the pick. I'll give it back to you, Jérôme, unless you want me to. I guess I can break man's juice real quick.
Yeah, I just want to add on Yoki, like, what do you think of the typical hockey player from Finland? Hardworking, doesn't cheat, plays with pace, plays hard. That's him. He's your typical player out of Finland. Not a big upside, as Brad mentioned. If he plays on the fourth line in the NHL, I think that would be a successful draft pick for Dallas. They have a lot of Finn also on the team, so not surprising they went that route. So I think we had him rank around, like, he went 146. I think we had him rank around 80 on our list. So that tracks. Well, that tracks. I think fifth round, sixth round is where we thought he would go. So we'll see. Could be just a non-sexy, non-flashy pick by Dallas, but one guy that in 3-4 years, his 4 or 5 years, I would say, is NHL depth player. I know you want to talk about Mans Goose, so I'll let you talk about this giant goalie out of Sweden.
Yeah, so he's pretty interesting because when I first saw him last year, he's very raw, technically unrefined in some areas, but obviously massive, and moves laterally relatively well. So the base, that's pretty interesting. Started the season relatively poorly, but then grew on me as the season progressed. We just left him off our list, more of an honorable mention. But he's, there's the toolkit's interesting. He has good reflexes, good kicking reflexes. The glove hand needs to come up another level. But it's one of those situations where if things go right, you might get a quality backup out of him. He reminds me a little bit of Justus Sununen at the same age, which I can't remember if I wrote about in our book, but there is some potential. Admittedly, I've not watched him yet this season. I've not seen him developmentally, but what must come up is his hip rotations, his skating in general, and his downward tracking. So when a puck is shot at him and he has to track it directly into his pads, he has difficulty actually maintaining that tracking without desyncing essentially. And that leads to rebounds. That leads to him misassessing where he needs to be off of recovery plays. So if he can increase that to another level and increase his hip flexibility, his hip line, there's a chance. There's a chance that he's a decent backup because he's big and he does move relatively well.
Yeah. All right. That's gonna wrap up for Dallas. I don't have we're not gonna make stuff up. I don't really have anything on the last two picks. So
I'll mention real brief, Jérôme, just real brief. Charlie Paquette, like it's awesome that he got selected. He was grinding out in the O for a very long time. And he's a big, thicker kid who put up an excellent season for a pretty bad Guelph team. And if he can get more explosive, he does have an outside chance of developing into something that's above replacement level in a depth role. So I actually thought that was kind of an intriguing seventh rounder. So I'll just give it a shout out to Paquette.
Let's move on to the next team, the Minnesota Wild, who has some interesting pick that they make in the draft. Let me share the screen here. So there you go. Theodore Alquist was their first pick, 52nd overall. That's actually a defenseman that we had a lot of time for and was really not well known at all. If you look at the public discourse, not a lot of people knew about Alquist. So we actually had time. I think we ranked him around in the 40-45 range on our list. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure he's in the 40s somewhere. The thing about him is that he really made some good progress, because if you talk to people in Sweden like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, nobody really thought he'd be like a future draft picks, but he has made huge progress. The skating has improved. That was one issue with him going back from a few years ago. But one thing we like about him is that he brings a pretty solid physical game. Like it's easy to imagine him playing on a third pairing in the NHL in the playoff with his physicality, and he's actually not a bad puck mover. He can make some play with the puck, so it's not crazy to imagine him in the NHL in maybe 4 years. So he was I really like that pick by Minnesota. If I continue here, Adam Benak, I mean, if he was 5'10", like he would probably would have gone a lot, if not the first round, at least the second round. He's playing in the OHL this year. He's doing well with Brampton. They have a pretty stacked team over there. The issue with him are the size and the skating. The skating was probably the big deciding factor in having him drop in the draft. If he was 5'8", but a great skater, it would have been a bit different. So smart player, like he competes hard, like really good playmaking skill out of him. It's just I don't know if that's going to work for NHL at that size and with that skating. So that size skating combo kind of like kill him for us. We'll see how much the skating can improve in the coming years, but he's an easy guy to cheer for because he's so fun. But those guys that you want to cheer for, that doesn't mean they're gonna make it. So Brad, maybe a few words on the first two picks here from Minnesota with Alquist and Benak.
Absolutely. I know some Minnesota fans are really like, what the heck are these guys talking about? Benak's quick. Like we watched him. He's fast. What do you mean? Let's break that down slightly more. So what we mean by that is so this player's tiny, and in order to translate, he has to bring a ridiculous amount of consistent intensity every shift, or he's not going to play. If he doesn't have Garland type of pace, then he's not going to play. And I bring up Garland because one of the contrasts between the two is Garland has better innate mechanics than Benak does. Benak Don't get me wrong. When he goes, he can fly through a neutral zone, and he keeps a fantastic pace. And his A to B, when you look at him, it's like, that's nice. He's not slow or anything. The problem is that mechanically he's incredibly inefficient, and it's much more difficult to correct than some people think, specifically with his base. So the problem with that is when he gets to the pros, he's going to be leaned on all the time. He's going to be hit off pucks where he drops the ice. He has to explode back up to his skates. He's going to have to counteract leverage disadvantages as a lack of his height. When he's stick pressing, it's not. Imagine him going up against Eric Branson in the corner and he's trying to stick press Branson. It's not, or Josh Manson. It's not going to be easy for him. It's going to take more energy out of him. So the mechanical inefficiencies are going to add up and pile up because it means that he won't be able to back check at the same rate. It means that his off puck play, even though it's very good, it will die down. And that really complicates his translation to a degree for now. Now, obviously, he can develop past what we think skating-wise. That might change his projection. But the other factor is, the one thing Jérôme and myself are looking at with Benak is the offense. We wanted to see a lot more than point per game in the USHL. Yes, it was his first year in North America. Yes, he looked brilliant in an international uniform in Czechia. But when it comes to a player that small, you want the offense to be Johnny Hockey-esque, right? You want the Johnny Gaudreau effect where it's like, there's no question, right? So there was a bit of a question. That's why we had him a bit lower. But he is very intriguing as a prospect. Theodore Hallqvist. So one thing about Hallqvist that is extremely exciting for Minnesota fans is that if you took like the top 15 defensemen out of that class, and he was absolutely one of them, he had some of the best exit playmaking rates out of any player, and he did it at the SHL level. In the SHL, he showed tremendous poise, and he showed advanced deception with both his handling and his skating to be able to bypass that initial forechecking layer. That is like the bread and butter of his skill set. It's what will ultimately allow him to translate. Everything else is secondary, minus maybe some of the stretch playmaking, which he'll need as a more of a shutdown specialized puck mover, a hybrid puck mover. So very intriguing player, better than people think for sure. We love the pick. And I'll go, I'll finish the last two there, Jérôme, before giving it back to you. Lurie Mamedovski. This kid brings it. In fact, you could make that argument and generalize that about the Minnesota's draft. That anything, I think, when you look at this draft as a whole, that they bring it. They really insert what they are on the ice already in a way with their skill sets. Like Benak loves driving through neutral zone, setting up his teammates. That's what he is. He's a primary playmaker. Hallqvist is very good at technically dissolving that forecheck and trying to shut down the opposing team. And Amedovski, this kid is he's one of those surging style of power forwards that is willing to drive through anything to get it done. He wants to assert what he is on the ice, and that's what's exciting about him, but he's extremely raw. There is no ounce or nuance to him whatsoever in terms of how he operates. He must understand first phase deception, so he does not have to rely on his toolkit and handling rates to the degree he currently does. He's got to learn how to allow the game to come to him a bit more, breathe out there, and operate in a way that does not limit him with his tunnel vision, which is there right now. Carter Klippenstein, prototypical power forward. Love the power element of this kid. He's toolsy. He's extremely physical, but admittedly a bit limited when it comes to creativity and overall ceiling. So where are you with Amedovski, Klippenstein, and the overall draft, Jérôme?
Well, I'm going to mention, and we'll finish with that, Justin Kipke, their fifth round pick, what is interesting about him is that he was drafted 2 years ago by Arizona in the fifth round. So they didn't sign him. He goes back in the draft, gets picked again in the fifth round. This year, he's playing college hockey at Arizona State. Not a bad place to play college hockey, by the way.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So, he had a good season. He had 2 good seasons after his drafting. Last year he had 62 points. The year before that, he had 52. As a defenseman, it's not bad. He had 13 points in 11 playoff games. He's 6'3", 210. So we'll see. We'll see how he does in college with Arizona State. But I remember we had time for him in his initial draft year. So obviously, when they're drafted, we watched them less. So and we didn't know he was going to be eligible again. But he's an interesting guy to follow. um, for Minnesota fans to see how he does in college, and maybe in a few years, like he might turn pro, and maybe he ends up being someone who can maybe at least challenge for a roster spot, in the NHL. So we'll see about him. The next team, Brad, we'll move on to um, Nashville with the Preds. That's they had they had a lot of draft picks, a lot of guys that we had actually ranked pretty high on our list. So let's share the screen here. What Nashville has here. So here's the draft class for the Preds. Brady Martin, obviously at number with the number one pick. Cameron Reed, 21st overall. Riker Lee, 26th overall. So maybe let's start with those three, Brad. We watched those three players a lot last year. Uh, so let's start with Brady Martin, who's in the NHL right now. Hopefully, he does get sent back down because I don't think it's a good. I don't think he should be in the NHL all year long. I think he still needs some time, mostly physically. But I mean, what can you say about him? Like he's a throwback, power forward, but he's not a huge kid, but he plays a lot like you can say he plays a lot like Sam Bennett. He hits hard. He's got a really good shot. He made some huge progress over his 16 years old season to his 17 years old season. Like remember, like he started his draft year on the fourth line with Team Canada at the Olympia tournament, and he finished. He was one of their best players, and he had a great year with the Sioux, and the more the year progressed, the more like he was really high on our list. So I think he finished fourth on our list. So not a huge surprise that he went at Nashville. And it's funny, sometimes teams will pick a player, and that player makes so much sense for that market. I think Brady Martin makes so much sense for Nashville and how historically Nashville has played. Like he does really fit, the Nashville way. So I like that pick for them. Cameron Reed is a guy we had more difficulty, ranking him and ranking him high. So we didn't have him in our first round. We love the skating ability, obviously, but he's an average size defenseman who we did add some argument about his defending. Some of us had more difficulty with his defending. It was really a challenge to really get a read on if is he really going to be good defensively at the NHL level. It was a bit of a up and down. I think defensively for him, the skating ability does give him a really good chance to be a NHLer. But mostly, I think offensively, we were not as impressed as maybe other rankings out there. We didn't think as his offense was great. And if your offense is not great at that size, and there's still debate over like, are you really going to be good defensively? It's tough to rank a guy like that really high. Like it's not the perfect comparable, but I remember watching Jordan Harris, who was a really good skater, um, defended well enough to reach the NHL, and then mix that with his skating, but just didn't do a whole lot offensively, really, to be more than a third pairing defenseman in the NHL, and he's in his third team in the NHL now. So I'm not saying Cameron Reed will be that, but there's some similarity here between Reed and a player profile like Jordan Harris. Doesn't mean it has to be Jordan Harris, but that similar size defenseman that skates well, doesn't have great offense, and defensively, depending who you ask, some will like his defense and some will have more question about his defense. So If you look at, I think I like the Nashville pick last year, Tanner Molendyke, a lot more than Cameron Reed, and they're similar. Both lefty, both similar size, both can really skate. So it's a bit fascinating that they went back to back here with that same style of defenseman. Um, I'm not going to say anything about Riker Lee, except I know Brad will say a lot of good things about Riker Lee because he has said a lot of nice things about Riker Lee to me all of last season. So, Brad, I'll let you maybe say a few words about maybe those 3 first-round pick here, and obviously Riker Lee, you're one of your favorite player in last year's draft.
Sure. I'll start with Brady Martin. Pretty remarkable development. So obviously we love this player basically more than anybody publicly. Obviously privately, you saw that there are some NHL teams who coveted what he had. So you cannot get this player without drafting him. This player is super, super rare, like absolutely one of the most assertive, competitive players you will ever see. Some Sam Bennett in him for sure. One factor that was fascinating to me was that if you look last year, his handling rates per 60 were like, in terms of attempted dekes, were top of the entire class. The kid would experiment 24/7 with his handling rates, but that led to very mixed results. Like this player doesn't skate that well. His handling was all over the map. Most people would say he's a secondary playmaker, even though he's a better playmaker than people give him credit. He's not on a great Sioux team by any stretch. Had to do a lot by himself. And you look at him in the NHL and it's like, oh man, he's already cleaned up a whole lot. That's extremely exciting for Nashville because I think he has to basically be for Nashville what Brady Tkachuk is for Ottawa. I think that's it. Now Brady Tkachuk for me was a better prospect at the same age, but it's close. And if Brady Martin can be something like that, I mean, that changes the entire complexion of Nashville forever, right? And that's what they need. They absolutely need something like that. So could be a home run hit here for Nashville based off of the early returns, what Brady's look like this season. That brings us to Cam Reed. As Jérôme mentioned there, we were not as high on Cam Reed. Yes, I'm sure some of you screaming at us. And yes, Jordan Harris, it's stylistic. There could be absolutely more secondary offense than what Jordan Harris provides. But to Jerome's point, like stylistically, similar sides, the skating is the base, and the offense is definitely secondary to a degree. The huge thing with Cam Reed for everybody that is interested in, like, if you're Nashville fans, you're trying to watch his game, see where he can develop. The huge thing with his offense was that it would die under pressure, specifically when he couldn't see the ice. Like, he does not have the eyes in the back of the head type of effect. He's not Hughes or McCarr or anything like that when it comes to that aspect of his game. He has a lot of difficulty when it comes to spinning off of pressure, finding the best option in the shortest amount of time. That really matters for his game because so much of his game is predicated off of his edge work, off of being able to evade contact, off of his evasiveness. However, the processing rates after the evasiveness die. So can that improve? If that improves, then he might really take off. The other factor is, yes, the defense has been incredibly mixed. Some of his base instincts for defense are just not there. He's not good at picking up weak side options, backdoor options in advance. Sometimes just even like basic coverage is a lost concept for him. So it's one area he's going to have to come miles, but he could, and Nashville has no problem taking this type of defenseman. We've seen it in the past, Jérôme, as you know. So that brings us to the golden child of Riker Lee, my favorite prospect from last year's draft. This kid is an absolute wizard, the best handling. It was so funny to me how everybody was talking about how James Hagens had the best handling rates in last year's class, the best hands. It wasn't even close. Like, Riker Lee's hands absolutely crushed James Hagens has good handling. Don't get me wrong. James Hagens is talented. He can handle a puck. Riker Lee has some of the most remarkable, sophisticated hands you will ever see. They are ridiculous. So it's one of those situations where the skating needs to come up another level. It already did by the end of the season, which is why we were so comfortable with him. But one other aspect to him is, like, sometimes you have kids who are super talented, but they don't know how to really take over the ice with that talent level. Riker Lee did show that there's a level of dictating in his game, and that really matters for his translation. But off-puck game needs to come another level, and he is raw when it comes to some of those junior instincts, where he's gonna be Mr. Fluff and stuff occasionally. He's gonna do too much. There's gonna be too much now. There's gonna be too many high skill plays that are in the wrong part of the ice. That will be part of the developmental process with him. So Jacob Brombeck, let's go back and forth, Jérôme. This is another player I loved. I thought this was a phenomenal pick. I thought this was absolutely, unquestionably the best shutdown defenseman in this class. Just tremendous potential, like ridiculous defensive instincts, exceptional processing rates under pressure on the forecheck. He has preset processing, anticipate plays in advance, and he can sauce the puck. He has technical playmaking. That's a huge factor for him, because if he's a shutdown kid, which he is, he needs to be able to feather pucks through the neutral zone, and he can do that. So I really, really, really love that pick. And just for me to finish, Ivan Kovic, mixed for me. The skating's phenomenal. But again, the two, one, if we draw it all back, I could talk about it from a mechanical perspective all day, but there's two factors. One, if I draw him right back to what he is, if you're a small goalie, you have to absolutely wow. He had a very, very, very average season. So that was one factor that played into our ranking of him dropping. The other factor is that one of the most important aspects of a small goalie I find he lacks, which is that advanced offensive players can bait him into dropping prematurely. That's a death knell for his game, because his entire base of his game is predicated off his elite lateral transfer rates and his small area skating. And so that will be the entire foundation if he develops for me or not. And honestly, college hockey, like, yes, it's getting better. It's improved because of the CHL agreement, but we won't really know until, honestly, he gets in the AHL, gets to that next level, much in the same way with Devin Levi. Like, that's, for me, it's the same thing. It's like Levi had that Hellebuck type of career-changing season in college, but it meant nothing until he actually got into a higher level competition. Ivan Kovic will be the same.
And obviously, Ivan Kovic playing at Michigan, how much is he really going to be tested? Is my point here. You look at the first week, and I think they won their first game like 11-0, or something ridiculous like that. So it's not going to be the best way to judge Ivan Kovic. I like the NCAA option for goalies, but more like after their junior career is done. Like, I think I would prefer Ivan Kovic playing in the OHL at 18, 19, and then go to Michigan after that. So yeah, I want to add something about Cameron Reed. Maybe just a tip for those who like to scout. If you want to see if a defenseman offense, if his offense will translate, just look at how he creates offense. Does he create offense with his feet, or does he create offense with his brain? Cameron Reed does create offense with his feet, not as much with his vision, with his hockey sense. It's not there yet. So it's a bit of a reason why we didn't rank him in the first round. We don't think the offense will be there. As a PP1 guy, let's put it that way. Alex Wong from Chicoutimi, he's playing one last year in the queue, and then he's off to Harvard. Very smart kid. He just has some limitation physically. He's not a soft kid at all. Like, he has some, there's some pushback in his game. Really good skater, similar to actually Cameron Reed. Just the offense is fine, but it's not great. It's not elite or anything like that. And defensively, like, he will try hard, but there's some limitation here of what he can accomplish defensively. So he's one of those guys that I kind of cheer for. I hope it works out for him. But I don't know if there's enough here for me to really invest a high draft pick on him. But getting him in the fourth round, that's fine. That's a good value pick for me. Maybe I'll finish with the Finn here, Daniel Nieminen, second year eligible. Didn't really watch him last year, but watched him in his first draft year. Didn't think there was enough there for me. to draft him. So he's not a bad skater. Again, average size defenseman, about 6 feet tall. So you see Cameron Reed, Alex Wong, Niminen. So that's three average size defensemen in that class. So that's a bit of a surprise for me, based on where the NHL is going. So yeah, that's going to wrap up Nashville. Unless Brad, you want to add something here on their 2025 draft class, but that's
Well, I mean, this draft makes or breaks them for the future, really. Like, this is an enormously important class for them. This class must go right. And it can. Like, there's a whole lot of potential there. Like, especially if we got it wrong, which of course we have before on Cam Reed,
yeah.
Ivan Covey. If Ivan Covey becomes a starter and Cam Reed's a top four defenseman, look out. That's a heck of a class. And we love parts of it. Like Riker Lee and Jacob Romback, for me, were two of the most undervalued players in the entire draft. Jérôme, you knew it. I said the whole year, whoever gets them, it's incredible hidden value. They got both of them. So I love it. And then Brady Martin, obviously Brady Martin. So we had Brady Martin. Incredible. I mean, that's Mark Edwards. Mark Edwards will attempt to adopt him. Martin's, will look out if your kid's missing. I know where he is. We'll get him back. Don't worry. That's Mark Edwards' favorite player of all time. So
yeah, and I'll add something for Martin. Like the great thing about him is how much he improved last year, and also like physically. Like if you look at him without his hockey equipment on, like there's a lot of work there. Like there's a long
development trackway physically,
yeah. So like he's a farmer. Like the gym was never really like if you compare to other players, like he has not been in the gym as much as like other players, and now he's gonna do that. Now he's gonna focus on that, and it's gonna be pretty exciting to watch him like develop over the next few years. But you watch playoff hockey in the NHL. Well, you want Brady Martin on your team. That's he brings it. So next team, Brad, St. Louis Blues, who only had 3 picks in the draft. Obviously, the first one being Justin Carbonneau. We talk about him quite a lot last year.
Oh man.
Yeah, so we're not going to go as deep right now on him. That's funny. Funny thing about him is that he had the chance to go play college hockey this season and decided to go back to the Q. I think Boston College were after him, but did sign his entry level deal with the Blues. Had a pretty good showing with at their camp. Fantastic shooter, great ends. We really had difficulty with some of his decision making. His passing skills were really off for us. And at the end of the day, we're just you have to make a decision on players when you do your final ranking, and we didn't believe in him. Definitely for us, he was the biggest boom bust guy in the draft. So we rank him lower. I believe he was 30 on our list, which maybe Blues fans think we're crazy. And maybe in a few years, yeah, that will be a legit take to take from where we ranked him. But there's some part of his game we just don't like. So that's why we rank him a bit lower. Maybe Brad, you want to say a few words here on Carbonneau, but this was a very we had like a lot of debates about him all year long, and from talking with Mark, and then you and I going back at it pretty much all year on him. A frustrating player, but a player that can, to be fair, could make us look really bad if he figure things out. So I'll let you speak here on Carbonneau. He's probably the only guy we're going to mention. Mikhail Fedorov is not a player I know personally. And the goalie out of Sweden, I think Brad, maybe you'll have a few things to say about him. But really, this draft class it's all about Justin Carbonneau for the Blues. If Carbonneau is a top 6 forward in the NHL, I think the Blues will be really, really happy. So I'll let you speak here on Carbonneau and maybe the goalie here.
Sure. I'll start by saying what I probably shouldn't say, which is that certain players, you kind of hope they go to the wrong team for development. So unfortunately, St. Louis is one of the best development staffs in the league. So that's a bit worrisome for where we have them. So the Carbonneau, like surface level, we're crazy. Okay. I'm crazy for sure. I'm the one who disliked this player more than anybody I knew, privately, publicly. I had zero time for this player. But on the surface level, I get it. He's 6'1". He's physical. He has a really rare type of tenacity to him. He's a mean-spirited kid. He's a bit of a prick, and I mean that as a compliment. He can get under players' skins. He can go after players after the whistle. He's no problem doing high cross checks to the back of the neck, then complaining to the ref and putting himself in between the ref and the kid. The kid's coming after him. He's chirping him. He's chirping the bench. He's driving everybody crazy, right? Very useful, because what happens with certain snipers is that if they don't have that, when they disengage and they're not scoring, they're useless. Carbonneau is not useless at all when he's not scoring. That's a very, very unique defining trait. And if he hits, it will make him even that much more useful than where we had him ranked and what I think of him. So from that perspective, like, I totally understand it. However, this is the most risky, the riskiest first round pick St. Louis has had since Dominic Bach. Completely different players, but the risk factor is incredibly high. And the reason why is because what Jérôme mentioned. So this player is all junior. He doesn't, quote unquote, get it. He doesn't understand why you need structure. His spatial awareness is incredibly poor. Decision making's all over the map. Incredibly selfish. He could end up a incredibly useful player that's incredibly rare and makes us look terrible. But the amount of risks that St. Louis took, it's a tremendous amount of risk. But St. Louis, if there's any theme St. Louis has ever had, it's take developing raw power forwards and turn them into something. That's their base. That's what St. Louis looks to do. They've been phenomenal at doing it. And so Carbonneau went to the exact place he needed to go. I will admit, Jérôme, I'm a bit surprised he went back to the queue. I thought with this type of player, you get him in as much structure as soon as humanly possible to bleed out the junior. And they didn't do that. Obviously, St. Louis knows what's best for him. They know him and I don't. So I found that very interesting. I really did. I was surprised by that. So we'll see. Massive boom or bust potential. Love Härenstam is basically a Swedish Alex Georgiev. I've had enough of Alex Georgiev to last me a lifetime. No more pain and inconsistency with that goalie. Härenstam has a ton of potential in terms of, like, he's always had accelerated development. He's not a big game goalie yet. Can that develop in him? Can he get to the point where the pressure doesn't mount on him? Can he become more consistent? He's a pretty well-rounded goalie, but for me, under mentally, under physically in some areas. Technically, he can be a bit all over the map as well. I'm not a huge fan, but they got him in the 6th round at 179. And Admittedly, the Blues, again, if you're gonna be one of those types of goalies where you need a whole lot of development and extra rep, I think St. Louis does a phenomenal job of developing goalie talent. So again, it's St. Louis. If you have some issues as a prospect and you need them ironed out, I think St. Louis is a godsend of a system for you. And so Härenstam and Carbonneau get that.
All right, let's move on to the next team. A team that has had a pretty similar scouting philosophy as us. So the Utah Mammoth. Let's look at what they did in last year's draft. But by scouting philosophy, I meant drafting players with size. So let's look at what they did last season. So obviously the Calle Desnoyers pick at number 4. Really interesting pick. I say interesting because he played most of the year with like a wrist injury. He had like off-season surgery. And, to be fair, like we were and I don't know much what, the risks really affected his game. He had a great season. That's that, and great playoff too. But one thing we were mentioning all years was how very few time we saw him beat player one on one with his hands. Well, that makes sense now with the wrist injury. Um, so that was one of our complaint last year was like he's smart, yeah, he can pass the puck, yeah, he competes hard. Yeah, the skating has improved from his first year in the queue, but he was just not beating players one on one that often. It got a bit better by the end of the year, and also the playoff. He had some pretty crazy highlight in the playoff, but like if you look at an overall look at his season, it was a bit of a letdown to see him not beating player cleanly one on one like that many times. I think he does represent like a pretty safe bet for the I was going to say the Coyotes for the Mammoth. Behind Logan Cooley down the middle. So again, similar to Carbonell, not a guy that was possibly going the college route, and he decided to go back to the queue for one more year. Got his NHL entry contract. So not much else to say about Dinwiddie. Like he's a really good player, just very safe two-way number two center. That's how I, always view him. And you see the value of center. We didn't have him rank as high as this. I think we had him 7. But you see if you can get a really good top two line center, like teams will draft those guys, even if it's a 50-55 point center. They have like so much value for teams that they will pick those guys in the top 5, even though they are only a 55 point center in the future. Barrett Aiton from the same organization went number 5, and he's been what a 40-45 point guy at the NHL level so far, and he had quite a few injuries, so yeah, teams will pick center really high if they think they're good. Because you can't. It's really hard to find good center, and Dinwiddie is, okay, maybe the offense is not crazy high, but he's really good away from the puck. And a fantastic leader on his team. Like he's been a leader on pretty much every team. He's a winner. He has won at every level. So there's a lot to like here for Dinwiddie, even though maybe the upside offensively is not crazy high. Like we don't expect him to become like a 80-90 point guy at the NHL level. Me, Brad, you want to maybe add something on Dinwiddie, and we can keep going on some of their picks from this past June.
Yeah, sure. The huge thing for him is, can he improve his wrist shot in transition? Like he has difficulty changing and abruptly changing shooting angles. Like that's the huge aspect. He can't laterally drag a puck like Austin Matthews. He can't do the Bedard, ridiculous extension into a toe drag that's like right under his skate. He can't do those things. So he relies on like just shooting windows with his snapshots and using his hip line to basically generate further velocity. And again, this goes back to the wrist injury. What are we dealing with, right? Let's find out here long term if he can get more mobility in his wrist, because that will change his top and bottom hand activation and ultimately change how he shoots a puck. I think that will be that will define his offense, because he can pass a puck. His handling rates definitely improved, as Jérôme mentioned, throughout the season. They did go up. They were cleaner, more efficient, better, looked more dynamic. Game, like he'll for sure play, guarantee. It's just like how high up can you put him, right? So phenomenal pick. To Jerome's point earlier, like this team is like, we laugh every season. If there's two teams that basically represent what we think and how we operate in the NHL, it is Carolina and Utah. Like very similar in terms of draft philosophy and like how they draft. Max Senica, this was the other top shutdown defenseman in this class, with Jacob Romback. Very different style of player, though. Senica looks to activate in the rush more often. Admittedly, I think he is still extremely limited offensively, as is Romback. But again, Senica, you could make an argument that he's not as big, not as rangy, and maybe even not as toolsy. But in terms of his advanced playmaking, you could make the argument that he does it at a higher rate than Romback, depending on the pass attempt and the play type. Stepan Hoch. This was a player we had actually a lot of conversation about, Jérôme. This was a player I went back and forth on because base level 6'4" power playmaker, pretty advanced, mature for his age, played up in Extra Liga for over half the season, but mechanically pretty raw when it comes to certain aspects of his offense translating. And ultimately, I was waiting for him to, like, he had one tournament, the Five Nations, where I thought he was phenomenal, and then he never got to that level again. So my question for him from a developmental perspective, can he just become more consistent with what he is? And if he does, then you could make an argument that he'd be a very useful depth forechecking option. And Igor Barikov, this is an interesting pick from a philosophical perspective, because if you look at Utah, they look to extract from Belarus. And again, Ivan Kachkachenko, Belarusian as well. And this goes back to Vadim Moroz, who I had a lot of time for in his draft season when they selected him in the third round a couple seasons ago. Barikov is on the same team, Dynamo system, nowhere near as big as Moroz, and I would argue not as talented as Moroz, but from what I've seen in the early going, better acceleration now, better skating mechanics than Moroz does. He's inconsistent, though, and I don't love this kid's shot selection. That stems back to a couple seasons ago where he had more limited minutes, where I give him more of a pass because he was getting less ice time. Before doing this, we did a 10-shot game sample, and it's still a problem. Like, he's still operating from the outside too much with his hand, with the shot. The shot selection is just not. He's not getting inside enough. He's not using it high danger areas enough. And admittedly, when he does get in high danger, his sense of timing is still not there. With he doesn't understand how to counteract sticks and body position and operate through triangles successfully at this time. So, interesting selection, but it's one of those selections where a lot has to go right. Let's put it that way. Ivan Kachkachenko, I'll mention very briefly, very raw physically. However, some base instincts of him are very good. He's poised. He's poised and calculated. He had a good season last year. He was off my list because I just thought physically he was way too raw. But Utah didn't care and took him anyway. So it'll be interesting. I have not seen him this season minus one game where he did look a bit more explosive, but still, again, like the physical base is still quite a bit under for me. And Ludvig Jonsson is a very interesting pick in the 6, where offensive defenseman, he is a phenomenal skater. I loved him actually the -1 season where I thought he had a lot of potential, but the huge thing with him is, like, can he actually hold physically? He's much more built. He's built for Europe, right? He's in Europe. He's built for Europe. He's going to have to get more sandpaper, more grit, more determination defensively to hold, because he's not a big kid. I think he's 6 feet at most. So interesting. But one thing, Jérôme, you look at Utah. They do not mind going all over the place for prospects, completely different types of players from different areas. And they love size, though. And that's what Hoch brings, what Seneca brings. And Desnoyers is not small by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, it's an interesting pick. Like, I look at Ludvig Jonsson. I remember, like, a few years ago, they're the team that drafted Janis Moser out of Switzerland as a
True.
third year eligible, even maybe fourth year eligible. We're actually wondering during that draft year if he was actually draft eligible, but
he must play well at the Worlds too.
Yeah,
I fought for it. I loved him. I had him top 45. I fought.
Yeah,
but yeah, he's into something now.
So it's interesting, like you mentioned about Belarus connection. Like, maybe there's a Swiss connection here with Jonsson, but yeah, interesting. Interesting draft class by Utah. I think Seneca, really interesting guy. We had him in our top 32. Really made really nice progress last season. Like, I remember the Olympia tournament, he looked more of a mid-round pick, and not the second, but once he joined the WHL in Portland, like he kept rising up on my draft board. And he's a 6'4", 6'5" right D. You can do worse than this guy with a mid second round pick. So really nice selection, and he does fit what Utah has with the Lamoureux, the Simichev. You can add Sergachev to that mix. Like they love their those big rangy mobile defensemen. So with time, maybe he's gonna end up being maybe a number 4D or number 5D. I think that's where I think is he a top four or more of a third pairing defenseman? I guess we'll see in the future about him. So last team, Brad. Let's move on to the Winnipeg Jets. So let's finish this episode with what the Jets did. So let me share the screen here for the Jets. Let's take a look at what the Jets have here. Here's the draft class by the Jets. Sasha Boumediene was their first round pick. After that, in the third round, they went with Owen Martin. And then after that, as my voice is cutting, Victor Klingsel in the fifth round, a guy we watched a lot of last year in Sweden, but also internationally. We were not too crazy about him, but as a late fifth round pick, it's not terrible. It's not a terrible pick by Winnipeg. I don't see the 2025 draft with a lot of NHL player coming out in the fifth, sixth, seventh round. It was just not a very deep draft. But let's start with Boumediene, Brad. I think he was the youngest freshman in college hockey last season. He did not start the year really well at Boston U, but got better as the season went on, and then finished with getting selected 28 overall. What's your take on this player and this selection? Because he was a bit of a really up and down player for us. Even at the U18, he had a lot of points. So it was like looking good, but when he actually watched the game, he didn't really. The decision making was not always good for him. So maybe your quick take here on Boumediene for the Jets.
Well, my take is people love stats. Throughout the season, he improved dramatically, and nobody talked about it. And then he gets to 18, and he does a whole lot of things wrong, but he gets a whole lot of stats, and everybody thinks he's phenomenal. So that's stat watching is a very powerful thing. The other factor I'll say is, like, from a philosophical perspective, like, he fits absolutely everything the Jets look to build and develop, like draft and develop. Like, he is an incredibly good skater. That is what they do. They draft phenomenal skaters at the top of their drafts. Elias Salomons and Brad Lambert are two of the best skaters outside the NHL. Boumediene is a very, very, very gifted skater in his own right, and I'm sure it's one of the main reasons that they did draft him, because if you're going to make mistakes at times, you're going to be error prone, which he can be. You must be able to skate to recover, and he can absolutely skate to recover. Kevin He, that you just pulled down there, and Alphonse Frey fit into this category of like mistake prone players that look to assert, but my goodness, can they skate, right? And that's like the Jets are looking to build a ridiculous team in transition that can overwhelm opposing teams with their speed. It is no secret, right? It's how they operate. But yeah, great. I think he's a great pick. The differences between him and Salomonsson is that Elias Salomonsson, I would argue, better mechanics in terms of his shot. For sure, better shooter than Boumediene. Boumediene looks like he's been able to quarterback power plays at a better capacity, though, at this stage in their career. So it'll be interesting to see who can grab that power play too long term. I would argue that Boumediene is not as good at retrieving under pressure relative to Salomonsson at the same stage. But again, it will be Salomonsson took off developmentally too. Like Salomonsson, his biggest issue with him was like he didn't know how to hide his intentions. Like he did not use any sort of deception in any capacity. And that goes back to the gifted skating issue. When you're that gifted a skater, you just get out of dodge anytime you need with your skating base. You don't really understand manipulation and feints, body feints, off looks. And with Boumediene, he's ahead, right? He's ahead relative to Salomons in that capacity. Owen Martin looks like a very good junior where he's smart, heady player, was used sparingly down the stretch. I remember Jay Brad mentioning that he wasn't used in big games down the stretch. That was one of the issues with him. So it'll be, can he take the next step there? Can he become more dominant and dictate at the junior level more than he did last season? Victor Klingsell, Jerome's point. So this player, for sure, at 156, one of the most talented players remaining in the draft, unquestionably. So this goes back to like the Dallas philosophy where they took Cameron Schmidt. With Klingsell, it comes down to the fact that he is in way too perimeter, and there is no give a you-know-what meter to his game at all. Very little in terms of intensity to him. I had honestly no time for this player, but in terms of playmaking ability, edge work, handling rates, he did dominate at least Linka. He did dominate a major international tournament against his own age category. So in the fifth, why not, right? You're getting at least some talent into the organization. They do look to draft out of Sweden consistently. So again, this goes back to the base of how Winnipeg works and operates.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Edison Angle, so I'm not gonna really touch on him. But Jacob Coutier from the OHL, I mean, 7th-round pick, so he has some talent. He's a fun player. Why not in the 7th round? I think he it's not a. I mean, like I said, there's not going to be many players that will play that were drafted in the 5th, 6th, 7th round into in that draft class. So why not, take a chance on a guy similar to Klingsell who has like talent and maybe with the right development end up being something for your organization, whether it's in the American Hockey League or a guy that can get some NHL games. So it's like, why not? So I think that was going to wrap up the Winnipeg portion of this video. Brad, unless you want to add something, but I think we have review every team from the West Division and what they did at the 2025 NHL Draft. I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to also thank everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We have hit the 1K subscription goal that we had in mind. So thanks a lot, everyone. We have started really doing regular videos on our YouTube channel since last season, pretty much. So I think over the last year we have gained over close to 600 subscribers. So again, thanks to everyone for subscribing and watching our videos, and thanks for the support. And we're going to be back, Brad, for next week. We're going to talk about another division for episode number 3 of Scouting Session, season 2. And thank you, Brad, for sharing your knowledge of all those prospects with me and our audience. And we'll see you guys next week for another episode of Scouting Sessions.
Thanks, everyone.